Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is a common intestinal disorder that affects up to 20% of the world's population. That is about 1.3 billion people worldwide, or about 61 million people in the United States alone. While causes of IBS are unknown, its symptoms are easy to identify. Most people with IBS experience cramping, abdominal pain, bloating, gas, and other related discomforts.
Usually, irritable bowel syndrome is a long-term, lifetime problem. Now, there is a select group of people who have a condition called post-infectious irritable bowel syndrome. And what we want to do when we see a patient like this is look for anything that might be reversible, either triggers in terms of food that stimulate the activity of the gut, such as caffeine or fat, or stress, and that can play a role. But in studies that have looked at irritable bowel syndrome in general, it's suggested that between 30 and 50% of people with irritable bowel have bacterial overgrowth. So if we can manipulate the excess bacteria in the small intestine, many of these patients get better.
The Hydrogen-Methane Breath Test is a simple, non-invasive way for physicians to test their patients and offer them a more concise medical diagnosis of their IBS symptoms. Lactose intolerance, as well as other common food and sugar malabsorptions, are being tested with patients presenting IBS-related symptoms to aid physicians in breaking down the diagnosis of IBS into more specific issues.
There's several tests that are available: lactose, fructose, sucrose, sorbitol, bacterial overgrowth. Irritable bowel syndrome is a kind of a complicated thing to diagnose. A lot of the symptoms can mask other problems patients may have, and the breath test can help sort out.
For physicians seeking answers to patients presenting such symptoms, the Hydrogen-Methane Breath Test is an invaluable tool in aiding with the diagnosis of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, also known as SIBO, and carbohydrate malabsorptions. The resulting treatments could be as simple as dietary modifications or a short course of antibiotics.
The breath test is a great innovation. It helps dissect who has bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine and who doesn't. So if you can take that subset of patients and treat them specifically with antibiotics, you may improve their symptoms substantially. And this is one big innovation that can help patients and take away a group of patients from the ones who are suffering from stress, food intolerance, or mimics of irritable bowel syndrome, such as celiac disease or inflammatory bowel disease.
The Hydrogen-Methane Breath Test is a simple, safe, and economical diagnostic procedure, usually covered by Medicare and other insurances, for patients who have suffered a variety of gastrointestinal issues.
A breath test is a very simple test to perform. Within 90 to 100 minutes, you can take a patient, they come in fasting, they breathe it into the tube every 15 to 20 minutes, and you get an answer. We can do this test as a mobile test where they can do it at home, or they can come to the office and do it. So it's very simple.
Quintron Instrument Company was incorporated in 1962 as a small manufacturer of specialized gas chromatographs and gas handling equipment for the fields of pulmonary function and exercise physiology. Their major effort was directed toward the development and marketing of unique instruments, affordable enough to be used by small volume laboratories for pulmonary function testing.
So if somebody's abnormal and their numbers are high on the hydrogen or methane output, you can identify them as having bacterial overgrowth. This is non-invasive. No blood has to be drawn, colonoscopy with preparations and intravenous medications need to be given. So non-invasive testing is ideal first step.
It was just something so simple that could determine where the bacteria was coming from, and whoever knew hydrogen methane in your system would cause so much illness.
Quintron's instruments are considered to be the world's gold standard in the breath testing field for carbohydrate malabsorption and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth detection.
It's important for physicians to accurately measure methane in patients' breath because it can increase the accuracy of your breath test by reducing false negatives by up to or higher than 35% based on recent studies that are in the field. The CO2 that's measured in patients' breath is also very important to determine and make sure that the samples that are being collected and analyzed are actual alveolar lung samples as opposed to being collected from the bronchial dead space or the mouth.
With the growing curiosity of breath and its correlation with the human body, many physicians are studying other potential diseases. One center in St. Louis is performing studies on restless leg syndrome and its possible correlation with celiac disease.
I have made a discovery that bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine is associated with a significant percentage of patients who have restless leg syndrome. And in this situation, if we can manipulate the gut bacteria, we may take away the inflammation or immunological stimulus for restless leg syndrome.
Quintron's continued development of specialized instruments to measure other specific trace gas concentrations will aid with the diagnosis of other disease states. They are developing specialized collection systems used by researchers currently working in fields such as cancer diagnosis and veterinary sciences. They have also provided collection systems to NASA, which were used to collect breath samples from astronauts while flying on the space shuttle in order to better understand the effects of space travel on human physiology.
The next step in the research is to be able to relate those gases and the presence of those gases in various concentrations to a particular disease state. And that's where Quintron comes in. We really, really want to try to continue developing other machines and measure these other gases that will allow for a more accurate and better diagnosis in the future.
For more information on breath testing and how Quintron can help, visit www.mybreathtestkit.com.